Okay, we are continuing on with our discussion of animal diversity. We've been going through the major phyla in the animal kingdom, and we've covered, let's see, we started um, with the porifera, the sponges. We've covered the sponges, the cnidarians, the flatworms, platyhelminthes, the roundworms, the mollusks, the annelids, and we completed the arthropods in the last podcast. So what we have left to do are the echinoderms and the chordates which include the vertebrates. But one last invertebrate phyla that we'll look at is the echinoderms. The echinoderms are a large group of marine animals. These are completely marine, and they include the sea stars, sea urchins, and the sea cucumbers. And They're named for their spiny skin, is what the echinoderm means. Spiny skin. They have, let's see, they have some unique things. One is they have a system that is unique just to their phyla, and that is a series of tubes that connect to an opening that basically the animal can pull water in, pump it through its tubes, and then inflate these tube feet that it uses for moving about and also for respiration. But this system is called a water vascular system. Again, we only see this system in the echinoderms. And so it's a network of canals that they use for moving around and for feeding and for respiration, and so unique to them. So there's separate male and female. So they exhibit sexual reproduction, and let's look at, here's some of the diversity where we see some of the different types. We have the sea stars, brittle stars, sea urchins, sea cucumbers down here, feather stars. So there's a lot of diversity there in the echinoderms, but completely marine, saltwater. All right, our last phyla that we're going to look at is the phylum Chordata. The phylum Chordata is where the vertebrates are found, but it is not completely a vertebrate phyla. So there are vertebrates and invertebrates in the chordate group. What distinguishes chordates is their notochord. So all animals in the phylum Chordata have this notochord. And let me see. Here we can see a notochord here in one of the invertebrate chordates. So chordates, again, are going to include the vertebrates, but there's also a few invertebrates, meaning they have no backbone, but they are chordates. So what distinguishes a chordate is this notochord right here. So a notochord runs down the animal. If it has a backbone, it's generally down the backbone of the animal, and it is a flexible structure kind of between the digestive tube and the nerve cord. It provides skeletal support for most of the chordates, and so here we see one. This one is called a lancelet. So there's really two types of invertebrate chordates. We have the lancelets. They are in the subphyla Cephalochordata. So the cephalochordates are named for their blade-like shape. They're marine suspension feeders. Here we see an image of one right here. So it has the notochord, which puts it into this phylum. Looks kind of like, if you look, it's kind of, they're small, they look kind of like worms or something, but they fall into this category again because they have a notochord. They're one of the invertebrate chordates. Here is the other one. So we have two. We have the lancelet in the subphylum Cephalochordata, and then we have the tunicates. This is a tunicate in the group Urochordata. And the tunicates, a common name for these are sea grapes. They look a little bit like a grape. In this part of their life cycle, they attach to a surface. They do have a larval state where they swim about in the ocean, but when they settle for their adult state, they're sessile. Okay. Now we're going to look at the vertebrates. So the rest of the chordates we're going to look at the vertebrates. These are the most complex animals, the ones that have a notochord, being the phylum Chordata, but they also have a backbone. And so because these are the most complex and they are very diverse, we are going to look at the different classes, the different groups within the vertebrate chordates. Okay, the first one we mentioned there is a class called the agnathans. These are a group of fish that do not have jaws. So they have a notochord, they lack jaws, and here is an example of one. This is a hagfish, which is an example of an agnathan. Jawless, no jaws, and it is a jawless vertebrate. The next group is here's another one. Here's another example right here. This is a lamprey. It's another jawless. It has an opening, has a mouth, but does not have jaws. So again, another jawless vertebrate here. Let's see. Okay, so the next group, we got two groups of fish that we're going to look at next, and those are the fish that have a cartilaginous skeleton and those that have a bony skeleton. So here's some example of cartilaginous fish. These fall into the group Chondrichthyes. Have a skeleton made up of cartilage. This includes sharks, rays, skates, ratfish. So these are our Chondrichthyes, fish with a cartilaginous skeleton. The next group are those that have a bony skeleton. The bony skeleton fall in the group Osteichthyes. And there's some different categories within the Osteichthyes group. There's some different ways of classifying, but generally you can group all fish into either Chondrichthyes or Osteichthyes. But in the Osteichthyes, we have our ray-finned and our lobed-finned fish. So ray-finned fish and lobed-finned fish. All right. Let's see. All right, so that's our two fish. The next category of vertebrate is our amphibians. Amphibians. So the amphibians, these include your frogs, toads, salamanders are in the amphibian group. They'll have usually a juvenile metamorphosis from a larval state to an adult, like the frog from tadpole to the adult frog. The next group are the reptiles. Here's some baby reptiles, and these are going to give birth out of eggs. So most reptiles are ectothermic, having to absorb some external heat from around its body. Let's see, here's some different examples of different types of reptiles, turtles, alligators, different lizards, so large group there. All right, the next group are the birds. The aves is the class that birds belong in. The aves is a very diverse group. Characteristic of flight is a characteristic of this group, and feathers are unique to the aves. And then our last group that we look at are the mammals. Mammals are unique. And there's some diversity. There's some mammals that lay egg and some give live birth. So we distinguish those. The mammals that lay eggs are called the monotremes, mammals that lay eggs. Here's an example. I think it's an echidna here, that mammals that lay eggs. And then we have some that give live birth. So the live birth animals, there's two types of live birth animals: those that give fully grown birth to fully grown individuals, and those that give birth to individuals that are born early in development and then have continued development in a pouch. Those are called marsupials, and the ones that give birth to completely independent individuals, those are placentals. So here's some marsupials here, and then we have the live birth would include the placentals. And here's a nice little chart that just kind of reviews what we just went over, all of those major groups and the general characteristics that we just described. And that ends our podcast on animal diversity and ends our podcast on the diversity of life on Earth and for that unit. So that concludes this podcast.